So let's recap from the previous lecture. What we learned in the previous lecture is that any signal used to have its own bandwidth, which is the range of frequency which is contained in the signal, as depicted from this figure. The lowest frequency content is f1 and the highest frequency in this signal is f2. So f2 minus f1 is the frequency bandwidth of the signal. In general, a voice signal used to have frequency from 20 Hz to 4000 Hz. In the last lecture, we also learned that the lowest frequency is generally taken as 0. So in short, we can consider the bandwidth of a voice signal to be 4000 Hz. We also learned that and this signal is known as, this type of signal is known as band limited signal, which has frequency content from f1 to f2. We learned in the last lecture also that a signal can be expressed in terms of a linear combination of sinusoidal terms at very well defined frequencies, and that's why we can define the frequency content. Nevertheless, in some of the cases, so this is the case where we have the periodic gate function, which is a periodic function and which can be expressed in terms of infinite series of well defined discrete frequency content. So this is where we can look into a time domain function into a frequency domain function. But suppose if the signal is not, if a signal which we are dealing with cannot be expressed in terms of sinusoid at well defined frequencies. For example, if we look into this function, it is aperiodic. So if the function is aperiodic, it is difficult to express these type of function in linear combination of sinusoidal waves of discrete frequencies. In this case, we had to resort to what we learned in the last classes, Fourier analysis, that is Fourier transform. So if you see this aperiodic function which is in time domain, its frequency content can be obtained by using the Fourier transform method, which is shown in this figure. So any signal used to have its own frequency spectrum, and which we can find out in this fashion. And the function which has a range of frequencies known as band limited signal. Now, so what we learned in the last lecture was a signal itself has its own bandwidth. And when we started this course in the last lecture, we discussed about the communication system, which has a transmitter and the receiver. And the signal is being transmitted from the transmitter to the receiver via channel, as we discussed in the last class. So this channel could be, let's say, a pair of copper wire, like a transmission line like telephonic wire, or it could be open space communication system, the free space, which is being separated by two antenna. One is transmitter and one is receiver. So in all, we have a system which is comprising the transmitter, the channel, and the receiver. Any system itself offers its own range of frequency which could be used for designing a communication system, and that frequency range is defined as system bandwidth or the channel bandwidth. For example, if you design a communication system at microwave frequencies, then in general microwave communication systems offers a range of bandwidth from range of frequencies from 1 gigahertz to 10 gigahertz. So we have a signal bandwidth and we have a system bandwidth or channel bandwidth. In general, the signal bandwidth is very small in comparison to the bandwidth which is offered by the channel. So when we are designing a communication system, the major challenge or the major problem is to transmit large number of signal simultaneously over a single channel. As I said, in general, one particular signal, let's see if we compare, or if I repeat the same example, that voice signal used to have a bandwidth of 4000 Hertz. And if we design a microwave system, it offers 1 to 10 gigahertz. So the frequency, the spectral bandwidth of the signal is very, very small in comparison to the channel bandwidth. Now, it is not wise to design a system which is capable of transmitting only one signal, where if we design such system, it will not be economic, first, and second thing that we are not exploiting the entire bandwidth range which is offered by the channel itself. So, so basic problem is that can we design a mechanism where we can transmit large number of signal from transmitter to receiver simultaneously. And the desirability here is that all these signals must be distinguishable at the receiver end from each other, and the information could be recovered from these signals after processing at the receiver end. So, one of the method which is used for realizing simultaneous transmission of various large number of information is termed as frequency division multiplexing. In this case, individual signal is translated from its parent frequency domain or range to another frequency range, and this process is known as frequency division multiplexing. So what happens in this case, in frequency division multiplexing, this method utilizes an auxiliary waveform which in general used to be sinusoidal one at a fixed frequency which is known as FC, carrier frequency. So this signal which is used for the processing of the information, the signal which is being transmitted is termed as carrier signal. Now, once the signal, the information or the signal which is being transported is processed with the help of auxiliary signal at the receiver end, this results in a carrier whose amplitude or the phase or the frequency, either independently or in combination, gets modified. So the result of processing of the information at the receiver end is a carrier whose amplitude, phase or frequency, either in combination or in or separately, gets modified, and such modified carrier is defined as modulated carrier. So the result of this is a modulated carrier wave. So let's try to understand why do we require to have this frequency translation or the multiplexing. It is, as I said, that I'll just explain within a few minutes. It is always desirable and advantageous and convenient while processing the information at the receiver end that it should the signal should be translated from its parent spectral domain to another new spectral domain. And let's try to understand this process. Suppose we have a signal, band limited signal, which occupies a frequency range from F1 to F2. The frequency translation means replacing this function to a new function which occupies a set of frequency between F1 prime to F2 prime. Of course, this is a new signal from the previous one. So when we are translating the signal to this new frequency domain, the new signal must carry the same information as it was carried by the original signal, of course in a recoverable form. That is the process of translation, transporting a given signal from its parent frequency domain to another frequency domain, so that in a way that it carries the information. So coming back to the basic problem of communication system, as I said, is to design a system which can transmit n number of signals simultaneously, independently over a single communication system. So let's try to understand this one. How can we translate, how can we transmit this n number of or various large number of information over a single communication system? Let's assume that we are transporting, say, n number of Y signal we want to transport, and all these Y signals occupy the same range of frequencies. Think of that in a classroom or in a rally. Say 1,000 people are there. Everyone is shouting. If this, all the voices are being transported by the free space to the receiver, if we are listening, can we distinguish the information or who is saying what when the information reaches to our ear? Of course, it is not possible. Why? Because all the information which are fed to the channel occupy same frequency range and interfere to each other. The moment they interfere to each other, they mix up, and it is very, very difficult to recover the information from that. Let's try to understand this one. Suppose we have different signals which are supposed to be transported. All the signals, baseband signal, occupy the same range of frequency, as you can see from here, F1 to F2. All these three n number of signal. Now all the signals are supposed to be fed into a single communication channel in a way that once they are received at the receiver, all these signals are distinguishable from each other, and the information can be retrieved after processing at the receiver. So as I said that if you feed all these signals information into the single communication system, all occupying the same frequency, they will interfere to each other, and it will be impossible to distinguish them at the receiver and to filter out the information from here. So how we can transmit these many large number of information to single communication system. Let's try to understand that. Suppose if we translate this signal which occupies a frequency range f1 to f2 to another range f1 prime to f2 prime. Similarly, if we translate by certain mechanism the second band limited signal to another frequency range f1 double prime to f2 double prime, the third one which occupies f1 to f2 to another frequency range f1 triple prime to f3 triple prime, such that none of these frequency ranges overlap over each other. Means in the range in which I am translating these information, if they are separate from each other, then it is always possible to distinguish these information at the receiver end and to retract the information after the processing. So this is what is we require to do in frequency translation, and this is called because we are individual signal which are occupying the same frequency range are mapped in different domain in the frequency range. So in the frequency range these signals are separated but not in time domain. So time domain, all the signals are occupying the same range, same time width, but in frequency domain they are distinguishable in this case. And this is called frequency translation. So the question is, why should we go for frequency translation? One of the answer I gave to here, because this is the way it is possible to transmit n number of signal through a single communication channel. And because all the signals are mapped in different frequency domain, this is called frequency division multiplexing. Another reason why we should opt for frequency translation is when we deploy a communication system which is free space, separated by two antennas, one for transmission and one for receiving. The electromagnetic theory predicts that an antenna works very effectively when its dimension is of the order of the wavelength of the signal which is being transmitted by the antenna. So let's try to understand the implication of this criteria for the effective performance of an antenna. Let's think that we need to transmit a single audio tone at 1 kilohertz frequency. So audio tone at 1 kilohertz frequency is equivalent to wavelength of 300,000 meter, that is 300 kilometer. So now if we had to transmit this audio tone with the help of an antenna, the dimension of the antenna should be of the order of 300 kilometer, which is impractical to design. Now if we translate this frequency audio tone of 1 kilohertz to an appropriate but high frequency range, in that situation the wavelength will reduce substantially, and that will lead to a feasible limit where we can design an antenna. So when we design a communication system where the channel is free space, then frequency translation enables us to have effective performance from the antenna. Now think of another problem. Suppose we need to transmit, again we are resorting to a communication system which employs free space as a channel. So now suppose in this case we want to transmit a band limited signal. And let's take once again the example of band limited signal as audio signal that occupies a range of frequency between 50 Hz to 10 to the 4 Hz. And in this case, let's assume that the inappropriate dimension of the antenna is not a problem, that we can design an antenna of any dimension which we require. So even if we are neglecting the inappropriate dimension problem of antenna, if we want to transmit a band limited signal, we will left with another problem. Let's try to understand that. If we look into this band limited signal and try to find the fractional change from band edge to this band edge, means largest frequency to the lowest frequency. If I try to find the fractional change or ratio of the highest frequency to the lowest frequency, in this case it comes out to be 200. That means if in this communication system, if I use an antenna which is compatible with one of the frequency at one edge of the band limiter signal, then that antenna will be either too large or too short for the another band edge of the signal. So same antenna cannot be utilized for effective transmission of a band limited signal. Now let's think what will happen if we translate this audio signal, this band limited signal, to higher frequency range. Let's say we translate this one from 50 Hz to a range near to 10^6 Hz. That means the lower edge of the band limited signal goes to 10^6 plus 50 Hz, and the upper edge of the band limited signal goes to 10^6 plus 10^4 Hz. And now let's try to find out the ratio of the highest frequency to the lowest frequency in this new translated band limited signal. If we now try to find out the ratio, it comes out to be 1.01 in comparison to 200. Just allowing to have frequency translation reduces the ratio of the highest frequency to lowest frequency from 200 to 1. We say that the frequency translation reduces wide band signal to narrow band signal. And that way, because the ratio from one edge to another edge is almost same, 1.01, means a single antenna can be effectively utilized for designing such communication system. When we talk about, let me be very specific here, when we talk about wide band signal, when we talk about narrow band signal, the wide band terminology and the narrow band terminology doesn't refer to the actual absolute bandwidth of the system, of the signal. The absolute bandwidth, that is maximum frequency to minus the lowest frequency, remains here the same as it was here. When we talk about absolute bandwidth of the signal, it is f max minus f min. So wide band signal and narrow band signal, we are not referring to absolute bandwidth. We are referring to the ratio of the change of the frequency from one band edge to another band edge. So I just narrated why we should opt for frequency translation. One, that we cannot transmit large number of information occupying the same frequency range simultaneously in a single channel. And second, when we are deploying a system which uses free space as a channel, it is impossible to utilize or design the system with the help of antenna if we don't resort to frequency translation. So now, having given you an idea about the importance of frequency translation or the frequency division multiplexing, let's try to understand how do we achieve frequency translation. And that is what I'm going to discuss now. Here is the signal which is supposed to be transmitted. And as an example, to lay down the basic principle of frequency translation, I'm just taking a very idealistic hypothetical example where the signal is sinusoidal at only single frequency. Signal at single frequency means one, let's say, as I gave the example already, one audio tone. So I have a signal which is sinusoidal as defined here, Vm, T is equal to Am is the amplitude. So this is the, what we call is a profile, and this is the phase factor, this is the profile factor. And so phase factor contains cos omega mt. Omega m is the frequency of the signal which has to be transported through a communication channel. So now before we discuss how do we do frequency translation, let's do little simple mathematics. Here omega m is known as angular frequency. I can express this same expression in terms of linear frequency, and that is expressed here. The omega m goes to fm with 2 pi. So this signal, the original signal now goes to am cos 2 pi fmt. And this cosine term, the sinusoidal term, can be expressed now in terms of exponential terms. So we can express this one as am by 2. So cos theta is equal to e to power I theta plus e to power minus I theta. So that is what I am using here. So now if I plot this signal in a spectral domain, let's see how it will look like. I have discrete frequency, this is called phasor. So I have a phasor of amplitude am by 2 at frequency omega 1, and this one is at frequency minus omega 1. So if we plot this signal in frequency domain, we shall be having two lines depicting the amplitudes appearing at two discrete frequencies Fm and minus Fm. Now let's, because as I say that for frequency translation we require an auxiliary signal which is known as carrier wave, whose frequency, as I already said, that used to be larger than the signal of frequency of the signal which has to be transported. So let's consider the auxiliary sinusoidal signal, which is defined by Vc. C stands for carrier, is equal to AC cos omega Ct. As I said that this frequency is much larger than the frequency of the signal which has to be transported. So again, this signal can be expressed in terms of the linear frequency and once again in terms of exponential. So once again, if I need to plot this auxiliary signal or the carrier signal in frequency domain, we shall be once again having a discrete lines which depicting the amplitude appearing at two discrete frequencies at Fc, frequency Fc and minus Fc, symmetric to the frequency 0, both the cases. Of course, as you can compare this figure with this figure, the Fc is very large in comparison to the Fm, frequency Fm. Now, the question is that we have a signal which has to be transmitted and we have the carrier frequency, carrier signal. Now, the question is how do we process this signal to achieve frequency translation? And here is the answer. The frequency translation is achieved or accomplished by multiplying the signal, original signal which has to be transported by the carrier signal, as you can see from here. So if you multiply Vm and Vc, what we get is Am into Ac cos omega Ct cos omega Mt. And now we will be using a simple mathematics. Cos A into cos B is written as 1 by 2 cos A plus B plus cos A minus B. So same formula I have used here. This goes to Am into Ac by 2 and this goes to cos omega C plus cos omega Mt plus cos omega C minus omega Mt. Now these are two sinusoidal. So if we multiply, the multiplication of these two results in two sinusoidal, these are different one at different frequency, one at omega C plus omega M and another one is at frequency omega C minus omega M. Once again I can express this in terms of exponential. So this sinusoidal will give rise to exponential term and this also will give rise to exponential term, that altogether we shall be having 4 exponential terms, one at omega C plus omega M, another at minus omega C plus omega M, next omega C minus omega M and next is minus in bracket omega C minus omega M. So now if you plot this signal, which is a result of multiplication of the original signal to the carrier one, if you plot this one in frequency domain, we shall be having 4 distinct spectral content of amplitude Am into Ac by 4. As you can see here, appearing at frequency Fc plus Fm, Fc minus Fm, these two corresponds to this one here and this one here, these two, omega C plus omega M, omega C minus omega M. And this one appearing at omega minus omega C minus omega M here and then here minus omega C plus omega M here. So as you can see here, multiplication of the signal to the carrier, this is the, what you see here, the red color line or diminished line here, that was my original signal which has to be transported. After multiplication, this original spectral lines are translated towards the positive frequency side by an amount Fc, also at the negative side by the same amount Fc. So my same signal is transported towards positive and towards negative. Okay? And in this case, I used to have now 4 spectral content appearing at 4 discrete frequencies. Now, just let me aware you that though we have 4 spectral content, if you look into these 4 spectral content give rise only to sinusoidal waveform. Okay? So, with this understanding, as I said, that is a very simple hypothetical example where the information which has to be transported is represented by a single sinusoid, because I told you that a signal in general which has to be transported, if it is periodic, can be expressed as a linear combination of a number of sinusoids at well-defined frequencies. So let's extend this discussion to a more um, practical one where the signal which has to be transported is a resultant of superposition of 4 sinusoidal waveform all appearing at discrete frequencies fm1, fm2, fm3, fm4, where the fm4 or the omega m4 is the largest one. Okay? So this is a band limited signal occupying frequency from m1 to m4. Now I can express this function once in this signal once again in terms of exponential function. So every cosine will give me 2 exponential. So this one from a1, this is from or fm1, this is for fm2, and this is for fm3, and this is for fm4. So all together in this case we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spectral content. That 8 spectral content giving rise to me 4 sinusoidal waveform. So if we plot now this signal in the spectral domain, what I shall be having? We shall be having 8 spectral lines of the amplitude defined here, a1 by 2, a2 by 2, a3 by 2, a4 by 2, all symmetric at frequency 0, occupying a range from minus f4 to f plus f4. So this is the spectral content of the signal, which baseband signal, which has to be transported, a band limited signal. Now let's see how we translate this function. Again the process remains the same. I need to multiply this function with the auxiliary function, which is a carrier wave Vc, that is AC cos omega Ct. So let's multiply this one first with this expression, this sinusoidal, then this sinusoidal, and this sinusoidal, and this sinusoidal. So what we get, A1 AC cos omega Ct cos omega m1t. Next is AC A2 cos omega Ct, and then cos m2t, and similarly from here another cosine, and then here another cosine term. Now this is cos A cos B. Cos A cos B can be put up in terms of half of cos A minus B plus cos A plus B. If I do that one, then this term will give me A1 into AC by 2, and this will be cos omega C plus omega m1 plus cos omega C minus omega m1. And so cos A cos B is 1 by 2 cos omega A cos B is 1 by 2 cos A plus B plus cos A minus B. So this gives me 2 sinusoidal waveform. This gives me 2 sinusoidal waveform, one at omega C plus omega m2, another is at omega C minus omega m2, this one at omega C plus omega m1 and omega C minus omega m1. And this one in that situation will give me at omega C minus omega m3 and omega C plus omega m3, and this one will give me at omega C plus omega m4 and omega C minus omega m4. So now I can once again express these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sinusoidal waveform into exponential, and if we express that in exponential term, we shall be having 16 exponential term. These 16 exponential term will give rise the spectral content of the signal. So if we plot this frequency translated signal once again in frequency domain, spectral domain, what we shall be having is a 1. This shows my original signal before it was translated in frequency, and this shows the frequency translated signal. As you can see, once again the original signal is once again translated towards the positive frequency by an amount fc, and also negative side by an amount fc. Also, as you can see once again here, the amplitude of the original one diminishes when we translate the frequency in the frequency domain. This is very evident from here. If you see here this figure, like here, so amplitude is AM into AC by 4. This is the amplitude after frequency translation, and the amplitude of the signal before translation was AM by 2. So AM by 2 goes to AM into AC by 4. Hence the amplitude reduces when we translate the signal in frequency domain. Now if we look into the spectral content, the original signal occupies a range of frequency from 0 to f4. f4 is the largest frequency. So the spectral width or the bandwidth of the original signal is f4. Nevertheless, after translation, the same signal occupies a range of frequency from Fc minus F4 to Fc plus F4. That is, the bandwidth after frequency translation gets double when we do frequency translation. This is a very important result. Frequency translation doubles the bandwidth of the signal. So we have taken two examples. One where the signal which was supposed to be transported was a hypothetical single wire tone as an example. There is a sinusoid at single frequency. Second one, we have taken an example where the signal to be transported was a superposition of 4 discrete frequencies expressed by 4 sinusoidal waveforms. Now think of a signal, because this is a specific case, a signal which need to be transported may not always be expressible in terms of a linear combination of sinusoidal waveform all appearing at well-defined discrete frequencies. So what will happen if the information which is being transported is not, if it cannot be expressed in as a summation of sinusoid at discrete frequency, that means the signal is not periodic, it's aperiodic. So what will happen if the signal which has to be transported or transmitted is aperiodic? We already learned in the previous lecture that when we have a signal which is aperiodic, to see its spectral content or to measure the spectral content, we should resort to the Fourier transform method. And this is the example I am taking now. I have now the signal which has to be transported, which is aperiodic and contains finite energy. In this case, if I have to look into its frequency spectrum, then I have to Fourier transform the function. So VMT is my general signal which has to be transported, and this figure shows the Fourier transform of this baseband, the band limited signal. Okay, so so this band limited signal, this is a Fourier transform. As you can see, this occupies frequency from FM to minus FM. So this is a band limited signal. Now, if this signal has to be transported, how do we do that? Again, we have to resort to, or we have to employ frequency translation. So how do we do the frequency translation? Because in this case, we don't have the mathematical expression. So let's try to use the property of Fourier transform, and that is here. Suppose I have a function in time domain whose Fourier transform is expressed by capital F in frequency domain. Now, if I multiply the function in time domain by an exponential e to the power I omega naught t, multiplication of the function in time domain by an exponential results in a in translation in frequency domain by an amount omega naught. Okay, I am repeating again. Multiplication of a signal in time domain by an exponential e to the power I omega naught t results in the translation of the function in frequency domain by an amount omega naught. Okay, so now for frequency translation, we are not multiplying the original signal by e to the power I omega naught t. We are multiplying the function by the real part of e to the power I omega naught t, that is here, cos omega ct. So if I had to find out the Fourier result of this multiplication, that is the frequency translation, I need to express cos omega ct in terms of exponential, and in that case we shall be having 2 exponential, and then I will be using this property. So multiplying the function in time domain with a parameter, exponential parameter e to the power I omega ct, as can be observed from here, will lead to the translation of the function in Fourier in the frequency domain by an amount omega naught. And if we multiply the same signal by an exponential term e to the power I omega ct, then from this property the multiplication by this term will translate the function in frequency domain by again the same amount omega c, but in opposite direction. Okay, so the impact of these two will be to translate the function in 2 directions by an amount omega c, as we have observed for the previous case. So let's look into this one. If I draw it, so here is, so this is what I just said. The result of this multiplication means the function is translated around omega c in the positive and the negative direction. So here is how the Fourier transform of this signal, my original signal which needs to be transported, after translating, that is after multiplication of cos omega ct, will look like. As you can see, once again, the original signal is translated towards the positive side of the frequency and the negative side of the frequency by the same amount omega c. Also, if you can see here, if you look into this part, the frequency content or the range of the frequency occupied in this translated function or signal is fc minus fm to fc plus fm, and here minus fc minus fm to minus fc plus fm. If you look into the amplitude of these frequency translated system, signal, then as you can see from here, compared to here, the amplitude reduces from here to here by half. So now this is how the frequency, the signal is translated in frequency domain. Now let's try to understand few very important points. If I look into the original signal occupies a range of frequencies from 0 to fm. This range of frequencies are known as the baseband frequency range, or simply the baseband frequency. Hence, the original signal which occupies frequency from 0 to fm is known as baseband signal simply. So a baseband signal is the one which occupies a range of frequency from 0 to fm. This is also another terminology for band limited signal. Now, multiplication of the signal by an auxiliary signal which is cos omega ct, this is what is depicted in figure. This is how we design our transmitter. The original signal is fed to a multiplier, where to this multiplier this auxiliary waveform is also fed, and the result of this is a multiplication, and that is fed to the antenna. So this process of multiplication of the original signal to the auxiliary signal, that is a carrier wave, is known as mixing or heterodyning. And hence the signal which is used to mixing or heterodyning is known as mixing signal or heterodyning signal, or simply it is known as carrier signal. So this is the carrier which is at frequency omega c. Now if I look into this frequency translated signal, the part of the frequency translated signal which occupies the spectral range from fc and above, this fc to fc plus fm, is known as upper sideband. And the part of the signal, the new signal, which occupies the range of frequency below fc, that is fc minus fm to fc, is known as lower sideband. So in this case, the frequency translation results in upper sideband and lower sideband. So this method of modulation or the frequency translation results in two bands, two sidebands, lower sideband and upper sideband. So we have two sidebands, and after frequency translation, we don't have any spectral component at the carrier frequency, that is fc. Hence, this method of modulation is known as double sideband suppressed carrier modulation, or this form of frequency translation which results in double sideband with suppressed carrier is known as, in short, DSBSC. So I shall be using DSBSC, that is double sideband suppressed carrier. Now let's take a proper example. So this is my signal, which analog signal I have already explained in the last class. So this is my analog signal which has to be transported, and this analog signal is depicted here in time domain. If I had to measure or to see its spectral content, I need to resort to the Fourier transform method, and we have to take, if we take the Fourier transform of this one, this shows the frequency content of the signal. Of course, this is again baseband signal which will occupy a range of frequency from 0 to fm. So this is my baseband signal, the width of frequency width of this 0 to fm. Now if we multiply this baseband signal with a carrier, this is what will be the resultant form. So the carrier in this case, as you can see, is amplitude is getting modified. As I said that when we process the signal which is supposed to be transported with the help of an auxiliary signal, then the resulting carrier can get modified either in terms of amplitude or in terms of phase or in terms of frequency or in the combination of any of these. So here, as you can see, the resultant waveform where the amplitude of the carrier is modified, And if you take the Fourier transform, if I need to understand or to see the spectral content of this one, I need to once again take the Fourier transform of this one, and what we shall be having, that the original signal is now translated at Fc and minus Fc is equidistant from the central part. So this is how the signal is transported. Now the question is that if I am using this method, that the frequency division multiplexing, and translating all the signals occupying the same frequency range to different range, and transmitting these signals over a single communication channel, how the informations are recovered at the receiver end. Let's try to understand that how we can recover the information from these frequency translated signals. And that is my question. The recovery of the signal, the information at the receiver end, is also known as detection or demodulation. So if I use recovery of the signal or the detection of the signal or demodulation of the signal, all are the same. Okay? So now this reverse, this recovery or detection or demodulation of the baseband signal can be accomplished by backward translation. This is my signal in original, this is my original signal, which is translated from here to here. Now if I had to recover this baseband signal, original baseband signal, I had to bring this new signal back to the original frequency range. So any frequency translated signal, if I had to recover the information, or if you had to recover the original baseband signal, I have to employ a method which allows me to have reverse translation of this signal to the original frequency domain. And let's see how this reverse translation is done. This reverse translation is done by multiplying the DSB-SC signal. DSB-SC means the original signal to be transported multiplied by the carrier signal. So here, this is my original signal multiplied by the carrier one. So this is DSB-SC signal. If I multiply this with once again another auxiliary signal at frequency omega c, let's see what will happen. So now I have, if you simplify, we have VMT cos A into cos B or cos square omega c t. Now simple trigonometry will reveal that I can express cos square omega ct as 1 plus cos 2 omega ct. And if you simplify this one, what we have is VMT. This is my original signal. So my original signal is retrieved, of course, at the expense of the power. Its amplitude is diminished by half. But doesn't matter, we can have amplified. So original signal is now received. But along with the original signal, we have another term, which is VMT by 2 cos 2 omega ct. Now let's try to understand what it is. The original signal is accompanied by another term, which is original signal multiplied by a cosine. And this cosine is at frequency 2 omega c. So multiplication of the signal with another cosine, we already learned it results in frequency translation. If the signal which I am multiplying in is at omega c, this is a carrier frequency, the translation is centered at omega c. Now if I multiply this original signal with a cosine signal at 2 omega c, this will lead to a translation centered at 2 omega c. So that means, let's try to understand that from here, mathematically. To understand this is in time domain, to understand what is happening in the frequency domain, I need to take the Fourier transform of this one. So let's take the Fourier transform of this DSB signal multiplied by another auxiliary signal. So if that means, if I take the Fourier transform of this one is equivalent to take the Fourier transform of this right hand side. So Fourier transform of this one will give me the Fourier, the frequency content of the original signal. This is what is our requirement. Plus, this will also give me the Fourier transform or the frequency content of this signal. And the frequency content of this signal will be nothing but, this is nothing but frequency translation, as I discussed, centered at 2 omega c, that is 2 omega c plus omega m and 2 omega c minus omega m. So this is what we have is a frequency baseband, original baseband frequency, and then translated one far apart at 2 omega c. I told you that omega c is very large in comparison to omega m, and hence 2 omega c is very large in comparison to omega m. So appearance of these two spectral signals, or the band emitted signal or frequency translated signal, is not at all a problem, because we can always employ a baseband filter. So if this signal is fed to a baseband signal or low pass filter, the low pass filter will only allow this lower frequency content to pass, and this all high frequency content, because it's widely separated, can be completely blocked by the low pass filter. Let's see how it is done. So this is a typical receiver where the antenna receives DSBC signal, which is fed to a mixer. This mixer, this auxiliary signal is fed to this mixer, and afterwards what we have is the original signal and this frequency translated signal. This frequency translated signal is blocked by low pass filter or baseband filter. What we have here is the original signal. So now this method which we are seeing here looks very simple, that you multiply the DSBC signal by another auxiliary signal and use low pass or band pass filter, and what will be the result of that is my original baseband signal. Nevertheless, the simple looking like methodology is not that simple. It carries its own inherent typical limitations. Let's see what are those limitations. Suppose the auxiliary signal which we are using, this auxiliary signal which we are using here is generated at the receiver end, not at the transmitter end. In general, my transmitter is far off from my location, or if my transmitter is here, my receiver is at very remote location. So the auxiliary signal which is used for reverse translation back to the original band of the original signal is generated at certain different point. So let's try to understand what will happen if this locally generated carrier wave has certain amount of error in phase and in frequency. Theta naught is phase error and delta omega is defined as frequency error. The example, the process when I explained here in terms of another auxiliary signal for reverse translation, which is cos omega ct, I assume that there is no frequency error, that is delta omega is 0, and there is no phase error, which is theta 0 is 0. So now let's try to understand the impact of this frequency error, inherent frequency error if any, and inherent phase error if any. So now let's simplify this equation. So we have once again cos A into cos B, which will be half cos A minus B plus cos A minus plus B. So if I take half, which is half here, this minus this, omega c will cancel out. So we'll be having omega, because it's a cosine of minus theta is cos of theta. So that's why this delta omega t here, and this theta naught will come over here. And we add up these two, what we have is omega c plus omega c, that is 2 omega c plus delta omega plus theta naught. So that is what the signal which we receive. Once again, if we, let's try to analyze these two parts. First, let's concentrate on this part. Original signal multiplied by a cosine centered at frequency 2 omega c, where omega c is the carrier frequency, which is very large in comparison to the frequency content of this signal. So 2 omega c will be further large. That means the signal which we will be having here will be widely separated from the original signal. So this can be easily removed by low pass band filter. Hence, there is no issue if we receive this part, and we can always neglect this one, because we can employ LPF, low pass filter. Now let's concentrate on this part. So in the first case, let's try to understand what will happen if we assume that there is no frequency error. Delta omega is 0. When delta omega is 0, what we have is the output signal is equal to half of Vmt cos theta naught. Our expectation was half of Vmt, but what we are getting, having finite phase error, is that my output signal is accompanied with a gain factor which is proportional to cosine of the phase angle itself, phase error itself. repeating again, the impact of finite phase error at the locally created carrier results in a gain factor appearing along with this output signal, which is proportional to the cosine of the phase error angle itself. Now let's try to understand what will be the impact of this one. If the phase error, that is theta naught, is very, very small and constant throughout, then of course this is not at all a problem. But think of when this phase error approaches towards plus minus 90 degree. In that case, the original signal will be completely vanished, and we will not be able to retrieve the signal from the frequency translated signal. In some of the cases, when theta naught is not very small and not close to plus minus 90 degree, but varies randomly. So a random variation of the phase error will cause the signal to get distorted without a practical use. That will be completely unusable in terms of information recovery. So what we need in this situation is that we should avoid this phase error. Now, once we understood the impact of the possible small phase error, let's try to understand what will happen when there is no phase error, but there is a finite frequency error. So in this case, my phase error is 0, but my frequency error is not 0. And then what we have is output signal not like half of VMT, but it is accompanied by a cosine factor of delta omega t. Once again, as per our understanding of frequency translation, if we multiply the signal by a cosine, it is again a frequency translation. In this case, it will be translated centric to delta omega. The frequency content here, if I assume, is omega m. So if I take the Fourier transform, what we will have in the spectral domain, the frequency is appearing at fm plus delta f, fm minus delta f, minus fm plus delta f, and minus fm minus delta f. I need to recover fm, but now we have these 4 frequencies. Let's try to understand. As I said that fc is very, very small in comparison to fm. The carrier frequency is very, very large in comparison to the frequency which has to be transported. Any small deviation in carrier frequency can be of the order of the frequency which has to be translated. That means there's a finite probability that this delta f could be either of the order of fm or could be more than this one. The moment delta f goes to the order of fm, this is a completely unacceptable output. That is, our objective was to recover fm, but we are recovering certain other frequencies. And if delta f is large, then I'll be having completely different sets of information. So the original signal is lost. What we are receiving is not the original signal, and that is not the purpose. So what we understood that the recovery or the demodulation, though looks very simple, but it has its own inherent problem, because the two carriers used as an auxiliary signal for the frequency translation and backward frequency translation are created locally at 2 different locations. So what we require in order to have efficient demodulation or the recovery of the signal is that the 2 auxiliary signals which are used for mixing at transmitter as well as receiver end must be precisely synchronized in terms of frequency and the phase. And this is called synchronous or coherent detection. I shall stop at this point, and from here I'll discuss rest of the features of frequency translation that will lead to amplitude modulation and the frequency translation probably in the next lecture. Thank you very much.